I'm gonna be posting a short video today, just a portfolio update. So I did spend a little bit of money today. I pretty much spent most of the cash that I had because I felt like it was a good time to buy certain couple of things. I'm gonna get into it here. The account is past the $700 mark, which is a pretty big jump from last time I posted. I think it might have been a little over 500. I did go ahead and just spend that cash. There's no point in letting it sit whenever things pop up. I did buy, pretty sure it was Google today. Bought $80 of Google, and for obvious reasons, not only because I like YouTube, because it's on a pretty good dip, and I think this is one of those companies I talked about where it doesn't really matter if you're buying it closer to its all-time high or 52-week high. I just think, something like this, you just got to keep buying. I did wait for it to go down a little bit before I bought it, but in what lifetime anybody around our age, I'm 30 years old. When are we going to see YouTube go out of existence in our lifetime or stop being a good company? Like, regardless of what happens, we all know how it goes. These companies will pivot into whatever they have to stay on top. Multi-trillion-dollar market cap, endless possibilities as tech advances. I don't see how Google could get left behind. And maybe in my grandkids' life, Google won't mean anything. But if, I'm the type of investor, I don't ever want to stop working necessarily. But, as I get older and I stop caring so much about loading the boat in the markets, hey, I would like to either sell or use the dividends to enhance certain parts of my life. I don't think I'm ever going to be a ginormous multimillionaire. But, if I have a sense of freedom in life, and plenty to pass down to the next generation, that's good enough for me. I don't need to. I'm not chasing not a huge, entrepreneur, I would say. I believe I'm business oriented, but I don't believe that I'm going to reinvent the wheel. I don't have any new inventions. I'm not maybe, my true dream is to have a restaurant, but that's a very hard business to get into. If it doesn't happen, I don't think that my life's going to be unfulfilled. I'm okay being an employee. I think I'm a great employee. I'm as good as an employee as you could ask for any job that I do. I feel like, any job I've ever left doesn't want to lose me. I just don't know if I'm that kind of person to really want to take it to the next level. I've been a manager a long time. I don't know if I want to deal with, what it takes to get big time like that. I don't think I want 1,000 employees under me. It takes a special kind of person to, want to have to deal with that. There's a lot of liability that goes into growing a business. So, that's portfolio wise. That's pretty much all I added today. I added a couple of dollars of Costco, but I added SATA. That's a whole nother story for another day, what kind of stock that is. It's a kind of like Realty Income, but it pays you every day. Kind of an experimental buy. Everything else, business as usual. Bought some Costco. I sold the SCHW today because it was just kind of dead weight. I don't even remember why I bought it. I'm going to stay consolidated here. 15 holdings for now. I would like to build these way up before I add any other slop. Google's kind of my centerpiece of my portfolio, but, I can add any of these things whenever I think it's a good time. I think they're all great long-term holds. Hey, Chippy's not really anything super special. It's an income ETF. I just use it to throw peanuts into my portfolio when it comes in as cash. But it's performed good enough to be worth holding. I don't care if it's 15 cents a week. It's something. So that's pretty much all I bought today. I not going to be posting for a while. At least 5 or 6 days. I'm turning 31 in a couple of days. I think it's the day before or after Father's Day. I don't even remember. But I turned 31 in a couple of days. So I'm going to go to some comedy show. I'm going to go to a comedy show in South Carolina with my girlfriend in Charleston. And I can't remember the guy's name. I have to. It's some young, like, Indian-looking dude that he walks around the crowd and has, like, a microphone, and he has, like, this strong auto-tune in, and he's, like, singing and just telling stupid jokes. It seems pretty funny. It's just a young guy walking around with the auto-tuned mic. So we're going to go to that. Probably going to go out to some restaurants. I haven't traveled a whole lot in my life. I wanted to go to South Carolina because of the timing and because me and my family went to South Carolina a couple of years ago, and it was the first time we ever went on a vacation in my adult life. Myrtle Beach was the first place I went to with my parents and my nephews. So I'm kind of reliving that, and I'm probably going to go, might get a tattoo. Not going to do a lot of shopping, mainly just eating and spending time. Me and my girlfriend haven't been together super long, so we just want to spend some time together, not just rotting at the house. And then Father's Day is coming up. I have no idea who watches my videos, but my family, we're not big on holidays, so I don't, I'm gonna try to figure out what I can do for my dad. But my dad is the type of person, he doesn't really need or want anything. We're not an overly sentimental family. There's nothing, a card or a text is not gonna make or break my dad as far as how he feels. I think the best thing anybody could do for the father is treat the father. All men want respect, so it's treat your father with respect. Anybody that has kids, I'm assuming they demand respect from their children if they're a respectable father. So I think that these last few Father's Days have been a little more significant as I've gotten closer to my dad as he's gotten older. We were close when I was young, but it was different. It was driven by football and by, my dad loved, being around the football games. I know that all fathers like the attention you get from your kid being good at something. But so it was different. I was a kid, I wasn't really too deep of a thinker. I didn't think much of it. But now that he's old and I'm older, we don't, I'm not playing no sports. He's done a lot more than just attend a football game, over the course of my adult life. Those things are a lot more important than, those are great memories. But now in modern times, fast forward to being 30 years old, I think that's the best thing I can do for my dad is, just be cool with him. I mean, he's going to die one day. I hope he's alive for a lot longer, but I think he realizes that, his days are numbered. It could be 5 years. It could be 20 years. With my dad, you just don't know how long this guy's going to make it because he's in such great shape. But for anybody that, might think they have a complicated relationship with your dad, it's really not that complicated. I think if you feel like something's not right, it doesn't matter who the father, who the son is. You have to really put the effort to make the relationship work. Because, it ain't like me and my dad are just the best friends ever and we agree on everything and everything's perfect and, fairy tales and rainbows. We both made a conscious effort to draw closer to each other. I think that's the ultimate Father's Day gift, is to make your dad proud of whatever you're doing. We wouldn't be here without our dads, So for anybody, most of you know that, but, not everybody sees it that way. All my opinions in my life have been altered greatly over the years by, simple comments that other people have said, and a lot of it's been YouTube. Honest to God, a lot of my development in life has been specifically a couple of different YouTubers. I don't know who knows who Anton Daniels is. He's pretty controversial at times, but, he makes a lot of statements that are really true and resonate with anybody that's level-headed. He's a father, he's a son, he's probably a lot richer than we are and kind of sees things through a little bit different of a lens, but he did live a real life just like anybody else and had to earn what he had. Probably went through a lot of pain to get where he's at, but he makes comments sometimes that I could have went my whole life and maybe never thought of it from that point of view. So I appreciate listening to what anybody else has to say because we've all lived different lives. So for Father's Day, I think that's, we should all try to make that a point, maybe not focus so much on gifts and spending money and maybe writing, down some thoughts on a card. All those things are great, but there's 365 days in a year. You don't have to necessarily only do something for them on Father's Day. You could probably call them more often, spend more time with them. That's just my thought on it. So I think that's pretty much all I got to say today. I'm looking forward to this weekend and Father's Day. In the future, I do want to talk more about my margin account. It's a mess, like I said, but, it's a good account. I leverage margin pretty hard. I've traded a lot in the red lately, but I have made a lot of money in this account this year, but that's a whole nother story. I've kind of used that to pay bills and stuff. And, I don't need it to pay bills right now, so I'm kind of going to let this thing grow. It's grown pretty significantly in just a week. But that's something I'll talk about again in the future. I want to focus on this long-term portfolio because this is really what my YouTube channel is mainly for, is to see how big we can get this thing because, you got to start somewhere. I want this to be the account that I really, use to enhance my life when I get older. So, all right, guys. Well, you guys have a good one. I'm going to hop off here and get back to the rest of my day.